Well everyone, this week we're going to be taking the image from where we left it last week on towards changing it into a multi-layer stencil. If you wanted, you could bring the image straight into this stage, probably like a photo or whatever, and go in through posterize and desaturate and all that. I just like doing the previous week's stuff because it lets you see the way the colours will sit together. Also, it's a source image, so you know what colours to use. If you want to kind of use the colours in the image, you know what colours you're going for and where. So the first thing we're going to do is go into adjustments and then go down to desaturate to change it into a grayscale image. Really, I find this just easier to do because it groups images together, so you're not having to cut out maybe a separate layer for a tiny amount of colour dotted all over. They're all kind of grouped together, so it makes it more consistent. Now this next step, I went into adjustments and went into brightness and contrast. You don't have to do this if you don't feel it's necessary. I didn't think it was necessary. I played about with it a little bit and I was happy enough with the image in its original state, so I just left that. Once you have that done, you're going to go up into, or once you're happy enough with the image, you're going to go up into filter and go into blur, and then go into Gaussian blur just to make the edge a little softer. I added a value of 1 just to make it a little bit easier to cut out. Here I was just messing around with the posterize settings. Now after last week's steps, the posterize wasn't needed because it is more or less posterized as is. It just makes it easier to separate colours out into solid shapes. So if you were working with a photograph directly at this stage without doing what we did last week, you might need to posterize it because it would make it a lot harder if the colours are sort of softly blending. You want kind of hard edges to make the multi-layer stencil. We didn't need them in this image because it's more or less sorted, so I left it as it was. Yeah, so the next step is to go over to the layers window here in the bottom right and take layer 1, and you're going to just click and drag it down into the new layer icon to duplicate it. And with the new layer active, you can turn off the layer underneath if you need to, but with the new layer active, if you go up and you click on the magic wand tool up here in the top left, if it's not there, just right click where the magic wand tool normally is, bring up the drop down menu, and it'll give you the option to select the magic wand tool. You're going to come back onto the image then and right click and go to color range. And what we're going to start doing is now we're going to start selecting each layer to separate them and isolate them from each other. So color range, and then click on, to start with, you want to click on the black areas. So use the little eyedropper tool to pick up the colour and then click OK up here. So you can see the little dotted line moving around, which means you'll have it selected. Right click again anywhere on the image with the magic wand tool, and you're going to go down to layer via cut. So after layer via cut is done, we have this left on its own layer, isolated from the rest of the image. Now we don't need this right now, so what you can do is, if you click on, with this new layer active, if you hit delete, or you can click and drag it down into the bin icon to get rid of it in the bottom right, and you'll see it'll remove that then from the previous image. This next bit is a little bit rinse and repeat. We're going to kind of do what we just did there for all the layers until you get to the top layer, which in this case will be the kind of the light grey or the white colours. So if you take this current layer and you drag it down into the new layer icon to duplicate it, you can turn off the previous layer. This time you're going to go for the dark greys. So with the magic wand tool, right click, color range, click on the dark greys, hit OK, and then right click and layer via cut. Delete that layer and then duplicate and keep going until you have each layer sort of separated out. once you've all that done, if you click on your bottom layer, layer 1, and use the magic wand tool to right click on the background, go to color range and click on the blue in the background, and then go up to select, inverse, and then go to edit and fill, and set the color to black and click OK. What that's done is now it's filling your bottom layer as a solid black color like this, and that's going to be our base layer underneath, or for outlines and shadows, and it'll go underneath. Then you'll kind of building up on it from there. So go up and make your layer 2 active, or your next layer, sorry, and go through the same thing, color range, click on the blue, then select, inverse, and go to edit and fill. Now with the edit and fill for this one, there's no preset for that shade of grey. So what you'll need to do is you need to go into edit and fill, and then click on the little arrow to go down to color. When you go down to color, if you go over the image anywhere, it'll give you a little eyedropper tool. So if you click on the dark grey area and then click OK, and it'll fill in the whole hair with that grey. So now you have a solid block of that colour for this layer. And you're just going to do this for each layer, working your way up to the last one. Now there's some lines and stuff on it that I deleted as well on the higher layers where I didn't need them, but you'd know anyway when you're cutting it out, because it's just going to be too much. You're not going to be able to come out because they're just really fine little lines, so you can ignore them if they get picked up in colours. Here you can see me just turning off each layer, so you can see the full image at the start, and then you can see how it looks as each layer is turned off. And that's all you're kind of left with for the top layer, and that's it turned off, and that's me just turning them back on. The next thing we want to do is, because it's a multi-layer stencil, to make sure everything lines up, or as close as possible to lining up, you're going to go down to this little square tool here in the bottom left, and you're going to create just a little black square up here in the top right hand corner, and we're going to duplicate that and bring it down to the bottom left, and they're just going to be anchor points, so you'll cut them out of stencil as well, but it just helps you keep each layer in line properly, that they're not moving all over it, and you're not trying to line it up with the image itself. You just line it up with the two little squares, and it should be ready to spray. So that's us ready to print. Once you're printing it off, all you have to do is go into the layer window and hit the eye icon beside whichever layer you want to print off. For example, in this one I went for layer 1, so that's the only one that has the eye. I know the two little squares have it as well, but you want them on all of them, so the squares just stay on. And then go up to file and print. Now you might need to adjust the format of the printer. Like for example, for some reason mine is set to portrait by default and it always goes, so I always have to adjust it. And click print, and it'll print off that, and you're going to do that for each of the layers. The only thing I will say is make sure that those two little anchor points in the right and in the top right and bottom left corner, that they stay they're always turned on, because you'll need them in each layer. And after that, then once you have your layers printed off on paper, we're ready to start cutting it up, and we're ready to start making the stencils and get spray painting. So we'll be doing that in next week's video, and that'll be the third and final part of the stencil workshop. There's our templates on paper, so we'll just be using them then to cut stencils from.